Right, well, we're just over a week later and it's been a very, very busy week. So in the last video, obviously you saw me going through all the various bits on the suspension and the tie rods, and I felt like I had the solution for the rear end so that maybe I don't have to worry about changing anything else on the rear end. You also saw me then get to the point where I was stuck with the battery. And the battery, yeah, that was a real worrying point, because basically this thing's got loads of 2008 type style computers, body management system things that go terribly wrong whenever they're subjected to the wrong voltages or low voltage or battery disconnect or reconnect. I've had this on previous cars where, you know, I took the battery off, when it put it back on, central locking never worked again. I was really nervous because my driver's door wouldn't work after having a slight battery issue where the battery ran down while I was doing all the work on it. 3 or 4 days, it shouldn't really have happened. These things do eat batteries. They also have a bit of a battery sort of, what do you call it? I can't think of the word, I'll put it up. But anyhow, you know, where the battery, parasitic drain, that's the word. Jeez. So I bought a new battery, £129. I got it back. I stuck it on, I connected it up, and I still had all the warning lights and the door not working. Living cameras. Right, slight sidebar. The battery in these cars are in the boot, a bit like a Jag XJS, probably to even out weight distribution. It's just underneath here. I bought a Bosch S5, which has got a 5-year warranty. It's quite a good battery. It's a bit bigger than what some people stick in as well. Got a quick release clamp here on the negative that comes OEM from the factory. Underneath this cover, a couple of push clips you have to push in to get it off. You got these, thanks to someone mentioned on my comments last week. If you have battery issues, warning lights, check that all these things are tight, because they sometimes can loosen off, or people have loosened them at some point. Standard 10mm bolt, I think that's 10mm on this side, and that basically is that. Yeah, so I'd got to the point where I stuck it back on, connected it all up, door didn't work still, and a whole host of warning lights which are no good for the MOT. I then realized something. So there's a whole battery reset procedure, and it's apparently quite easy on these, but obviously not that easy. And it says you connect the battery, then you go, you put the key in the lock, you let it do its whole cycle for about 30 to 60 seconds, then you start the engine and everything should be okay, because everything will reset itself in that time. The one thing the instructions missed out, which I believe I'm right in saying has been missed out, is you've got to close the trunk. So I closed the trunk properly, you disconnected the battery for 10-20 minutes, reconnected it, I closed the trunk firmly, I then got in the car and shut the door, put my key in, waited, and suddenly, miraculously, as if a gift from heaven came down to bless me, an angel popped up and everything worked. Suddenly the door worked, there were no warning lights on the dashboard, everything was good. So now it's time to get back underneath the car again. Right, so I'm trying to get this shock absorber sorted. So first off, just like the backs, the sky hook, and you can tell if it's sky hook if it's got the wire coming out the top of the shock, which you'll see underneath the bonnet. Without removing the covers, you can just about see it, you peer underneath. These have got the adjustable shock ride heights. What I've done is I've clamped up the spring and then I wound this down, took the tension off, wound this down. I've got to reset the front because it's not quite right. So your shock absorber bush is down here. This one was absolutely knackered. It's all fallen apart in there. I've let off the anti-roll bar, or sway bar, whatever you want to call it, and that's allowed the suspension to drop a bit more. So to get this out, if you undo these two bolts here and here, over here, on the top control arm, that will give you enough space to get the shock absorber out, and then you can do this off the car, which probably would be a lot easier. For me though, I'm going to try to avoid doing any of that. I've been trying to replace it, just this bush, in place, because I want to get it for MOT as quick as possible. It hasn't worked so far, so I've got my welding blanket, and somewhere here my angle grinder with a flap disc. These are brilliant, better than a grinding disc. More expensive as well, but make a lot less noise, a lot less mess. Don't chuck out so many sharp shards to get in your eyes, although I use a full face visor, so don't usually have to worry about that too much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully grind off the rim there, because I think that might be sticking it, and then I'm going to use a titchy bit of heat, ever so small amount, on here to make it, while I've got it under tension with two sockets, a bigger socket on one side, thinner socket on the tops this side, bit of threaded rod to try and push, and then as I say, I heat that while I've got the tension on it and see if I can get it moving. Do use gloves when you use an angle grinder. My left hand looks like a patchwork quilt. It's got lots of scars, although now I'm getting extra scars on there that actually take away the old scars. Right, so welcome to my little personal hell. So there I am, the socket with a piece of threaded bar going through onto the bit, and it started moving without heat, which is good because I didn't really want to get heat in here. It feels like the right thing to do, to use heat, but I'm too close to that ball joint. The ball joint's just here, and that would entail replacing suspension arms at hundreds of pounds if I got it wrong. So I'd rather not use heat if I can. But we'll see how it goes. It started moving anyhow. So you tighten up this bolt here, and then on the other side there's another socket back there. So just there's the other socket, which is bigger than the bush. It's a 36mm socket. The other side's a 22mm socket, which just happens to be 35mm diameter, which is fine for pushing the bush out. So you just tighten those two up and it drives the bush out. You tighten it up nice and tight, and then you just tap on the end like that. And because it's under pressure, because this is really under pressure into the other socket, it will give a little bit. So just tap it a couple of times, it gives a little bit, tighten it. You only get like 1/8 of a turn, then tap it again, 1/8 of a turn, tap it again, 1/8 of a quarter of a turn, and it will slowly work its way out. And here is the old bush. So as you can see, it's dead. It was an advice item for the last couple of years, or 3 years I think, according to the MOT history. So you can see this is why it's been so stiff to get out. It's steel into aluminium, and it's just rusted in a couple of places, and that's just made it slightly thicker. So I've put the other one in the freezer. Give it an hour in the freezer or something. Clean up that hole in the shock absorber, and hopefully the new one will go in. And then technically, this is the last job for MOT. One thing I've not mentioned in this video is the Category S damage. Now this is the damage on the rear that wrote the car off and enabled me to get it so cheap. Well, I've been looking and there is no structural damage on the back of the car, really. It was just written off because of the huge amount of costs that it would have been for all the parts, hire cars and stuff. Basically, the insurance company thought, stuff it, and just, wrote a check. Legally, it needs to be inspected before returning to the road, and that inspection is actually just the MOT test. So if she passes that, she's back on the road. So I'm going to be looking at repairing the bad area in a future video. So if you're enjoying this video and want to see me messing around with the rear and fixing further things on this car, then please consider liking and subscribing. Go on, make me happy. So now it's time to go to MOT, and if she passes, I get to drive the car whenever I want. Well, I'm heading off to MOT now, so wish me luck, because this is a bit scary. I hate MOTs at the best of times, I really do. But obviously this one, if the rear ball joint, lower ball joints are knackered, then it's £1,000 a side. So I'm hoping everything is fine. I've checked everything, I've made all the changes I need to make, and I'm just hoping I get away with this one. because it'll make a real difference if this passes. So what happened after that glorious MOT? She failed. Yeah, after all of that work, she failed. But she only failed on 3 things. One was little repeater indicator there, bulb had gone. Another one was headlamp pane, all on this side of the car as well. Another one was the pin in the brake caliper wasn't fully secured home. So I got home, took the wheel off, drove that pin home. I found that I couldn't find a bulb for the indicator. I took the indicator out, actually, and it fell apart as well. I found a Maserati repeater indicator, complete, the whole thing, is £7.62 plus the VAT, so less than 10 quid for the whole light. So I just bought a new one rather than trying to glue the old one back together again and buy a bulb for 2 quid. So I ordered that, and then I went to reset the headlights, of course, and of course on this car, wouldn't you know it, it's got auto leveling headlights, and this answers what the little weird things are on the front and back wishbones on this car. Basically, they judge the level of the car and they set the headlamps, the level of them accordingly. As it is, I looked in the manual that someone kindly emailed me for free. Thank you to forums for that. So I went to the front end of the car, looked in the manual, and it said, take off the inner wheel arch, and there's these 2 adjusters. So of course I go and do that, don't I? Break 2 bolts getting the inner wheel arch off. Can't reach the adjusters, and think, why on earth is it like this? A few minutes later, for some reason, I opened the bonnet and realised that despite the Maserati official manual telling you have to take the wheel arch off, they've actually got cutouts in the engine panelling so you can reach the headlamps there. Each side you've got little cutouts. I have no idea. I messed around with it. I think that one does up and that, I don't know what they do. Anyhow, you sort of tighten them up and it goes up, and you drop them down, they go down. Down there, that one there, which you probably can't see. There's one here, one bit there. That's the left to right, I think it is. Something like that anyway. So those are the headlamp adjusters, and you don't need to take the wheel arches off. Cool engine. So anyway, I had to drill out the bolts, the broken off bolts in the wheel arch, retap them, put in stainless steel bolts, which I've done. Why don't car manufacturers do that on the wheel arches? Stainless steel bolts are so easy and cheap to get nowadays. Why not just use stainless steel bolts on the wheel arches? I mean, when I say cheap, I mean they're 2 pence more than a steel bolt. It would add £1.50 to the cost of the car, perhaps, if that. I don't know, I just don't understand it. But anyhow, I refitted them and I took it to MOT, and I got my MOT. Hence me being back here, of course, because in the UK, you have to have insurance, but you can drive the car without an MOT to the MOT station and back again. And that's it. And it has to be, if you're caught by an ANPR camera, that's an automatic number plate recognition camera, without road tax and MOT on there, you get in a lot of trouble. And they're all automated cameras, and there happens to be one quite close to my home because of where I live. So I could drive it to MOT and I could drive it back again, and that was it. But this today is my first day driving the car fully legal. I say fully legal as legal going to the MOT, but properly registered, MOT'd and taxed. And this is how much I've spent, which I'm just about to put up on the screen.
So these are the costs to get her on the road. So it includes buying the car and all the bits to get her to MOT,
including tax and insurance. I'm not in the clear yet. It looks like I've won, doesn't it? And there's no doubt I got this car at a fantastic price, but it was a fantastic price for a reason. But I haven't really quite won yet, because on the MOT, it did have a bunch of advisories on the front suspension. Again, just like the rear suspension, I suspect that the bushes are the issue that make the ball joints look like they're gone, because that's one of the advantages, is the ball joints. And again, on the front, it's £1,000 aside for the parts, and it's advisory, so I don't have to do anything about it until it's worse, which might not be next year, it might be the year after. Also, of course, I'm still looking at the variator, which is going to be about 1,000 at some point in the future.
Probably best now to look at the bigger picture of the costs. As I said previously in my first video, I can't really afford to keep this car if it costs me £13,000. I'm not in that financial position. As you can see from this list of stuff though, are required to make the car reliable and usable, I'm far below that. So at the moment, hopefully, and barring any major shock or any big tranche of bad luck, I believe that I might just be able to keep my Maserati. And yes, that makes me very, very happy. However, there is all this stuff to do before she's comfortably on the road, and I'll be looking at this in future videos.
I've included in my little list of costs there the various fluids that had to be done. So I don't know when the differential was last changed, and these you should change the differential oil every 20-30,000 miles, and it's 50 quid a time. I'm going to do the full gearbox oil change, so that means proper oil change, filter, and also removing the mechatronics unit and putting new rubber boots in. These rubbers in the mechatronic unit, they sort of break down, break the seal a bit, and then it doesn't work so well. So I'm going to do those, and then it will be perfect. Likewise, I want to do another oil change, and that's 9 litres of oil. I don't need to do the spark plugs because the previous owner did it, and I've got evidence for that as well, so I'm okay. But there's a whole host of other things. The front engine mounts are really bad, and they are £170 each. Incidentally, I paid for everything, and then the next night I watched a Matt Armstrong video, and he put a code up on one of his videos that you can use for Scuderia Ferrari parts, and I could have got them for 168 and I paid 170. So yeah, use that code. In fact, I'll stick it up now, and I'm not sure. No, I can't do that, can I? That'd be rude. Go and watch his bloody Ferrari video where he's part 3, I think it is. He's rebuilding some Ferrari he bought for 60 grand or something like that, and he's got a code on there. Tell him on his comments that I sent you. There you go. And they'll think, who the hell's that? So there's a few more things that I need to do mechanically to definitely make sure she's good for the future. But I would like to do wheel spacers. I would like to get the add-on seals on the bottom of here, but that really is a future thing. But another thing I really need to do is, this car has a glorious V8 engine, and yet, just as Matt Armstrong, I keep on quoting that guy, said, it sounds like this. It's muffled. The reason is the 4.2 does have valves in the exhaust box. You think it doesn't. The 4.7 have the valves on the outside, and they're pneumatic valves that open up the exhaust above 3,000 revs. The 4.2 has valves too, but they're inside the box and they operate on exhaust pressure. I know that the valves on this have something wrong with them, because she has this horrible raspy noise when you're disappearing up the road. It's at certain revs it goes a horrible sort of tinny noise. I can't afford the £2,000 for a fancy Larini system. I can't afford the £1,400 for a second-hand eBay Seeker system or whatever it is. I can't even afford the 750 quid for a 4.7 litres rear boxes, second-hand, half knackered off someone else's car. And it's hard to find them for 750 quid, by the way. What I can afford to do is take my current boxes off, cut them open, cut off the springs each side that hold the flap, remove the flap, and weld them back up again. Because obviously I'm not particularly worried about welding up exhausts, because just look at my other videos, how much welding I've done with TIG and MIG on the boat. So that's what I'm going to do. And that, of course, is a free job, because all I got to do, I'll buy some nice new stainless steel, they're nice proper exhaust clamps for it, not those horrible ones that people use. And then I'll take those off, cut it open, and just remove the valves. She shouldn't be that much louder. She should be a bit more louder at low revs, just a little bit more. and then she'll be normal sort of sounding at the higher revs. So less muffled, sufficiently louder, but doesn't make me feel like some kind of boy racer or some kind of show off, because I don't really like showing off. So those are my plans, and I'm hoping it should all work good.